Good morning, everyone, and thank you so much for being here, and also warm welcome, that's one. But also a big thank you to everyone and also to the organization for inviting us. We are from the Netherlands, and we are going to tell you a little bit about our experiences of following multiple pilot cities, not just in the Netherlands, but also across Europe and even over the world, and what are our experiences and our lessons learned, and how can we share it with you. So, what we see so far is that this is one of the, I would say, key implementations where you see that they're already making a step forward. In many locations, however, you still see that there's a safety operator on board. There is no possibility yet to upscale this system to multiple systems at the same location or to different locations. And then the business case is not viable, and that is, of course, what we all want. We want to ensure that this becomes a viable business case that is actually also more attractive, more comfortable, and safer in a sense for passengers, but also for those who are operating it. Now, what we have done, we have been following all those pilot cities, and those experiences, we try to summarize it, and today we are sharing it with you. And one of those is the video that we see over here, which is at the private area of the European Space Agency in the Netherlands, Noordwijk, one of our own implementations. And here what we actually are doing is giving the passenger the control over the vehicle. It enters the vehicle, it sits down, it has a manual, it just chooses where to go to by pressing where it goes, and then it just safely rides and brings the passenger to the next location. I already see a couple of people, I think, in the hall, of whom I know, are thinking, hey, what is he talking about? This vehicle can actually not do it, operating without steward. And actually you're right, because this vehicle cannot do it. The technology of this vehicle, at least, is not that far that it can operate without a safety operator. But what we are trying to share today, and what we have seen across all those different pilot cities, is that safety is not only guaranteed by the technology of the vehicle, but it concerns much more elements, and that's something that we're trying to say today. But before we do that, let us introduce ourselves. So my name is Ahmad Hashish. I'm really one of the smart mobility experts in the Netherlands and in Europe on self-driving systems for public transport, but also for logistics, both on the road but also on water. We and me myself, I've been closely following but also implementing more than 20 different public transport but also logistical implementations all across Europe, in European projects, world projects, but also in the Netherlands. And last but not least, what I mainly do is work actively and closely with both private and public sector.
I'm Ilse van Zeumeren. I'm a human-machine interaction specialist on autonomous vehicles. I always keep a close eye to the social perspective, the ultimate goal. I'm a service designer, smart mobility, and behavior change.
Yeah, and today what we're also trying to say is this presentation is not a technical presentation, not at all. What we're showing is that technology and safety is just as much as it is about and concerning technology, it's also concerning human perspectives and human elements. So where do we get this knowledge from? So what did we actively follow, actually? So one of the key things that we do is we collaborate very closely with the World Bank. And what we were fortunate to do is go to 10 or 15 different countries in the world, ranging from Canada and the US, all across to Singapore and Japan, interviewing experts in the field and understanding what are their lessons learned, what are their challenges, how are they implementing these automated vehicle systems in their countries, etc., etc. And that is one of them. And we have been also very closely interviewing a couple of the experts in the field. Some of them are also sitting here in the room, and they're also going to present, if I'm correct, but also bigger vehicle providers like Cruise and Waymo. The next one that we are involved in are, of course, European projects. And one of the European projects is Ride to Autonomy, perhaps not known to everyone, but there we actively and closely follow 10 pilot cities in 10 different countries on their implementations and what did they come across and what were their challenges. The first one, what we did in the Netherlands, was already dates back to 2014, which is a very long time ago. And actually the first generation, actually the first model of the Easy Mile vehicle, the Easy 10 model number 1. I already see him sitting, so I think he knows what I'm talking about. And this is the Wiepot, which was actually traveling between Wageningen and Ede in the Netherlands. And there we started actually learning. So what is actually happening? And we did that by doing a learning by doing approach. So we don't actually know what's happening. We have a little bit of idea, but back then we didn't have a clue. We just started out and see what's happening. And last but not least, of course, our own implementations. We as the Future Mobility Network, we also work actively with partners, private and public organizations in the Netherlands, implementing these self-driving systems on mixed traffic conditions, in mixed traffic situations, as a last mile service also for people. One of them is the red one, is the one that is driving and transporting people who are less mobile, I would say, from a public transport location to the entrance of the hospital. And the next one that is, it's a bit vague, but that's the Fabulous project in Helmond, one of the European projects that was also conducted. And there we did one of the most complex implementations so far in the Netherlands with last mile automated vehicles, which was a road of about 3 kilometers with mixed traffic conditions, 50-kilometer roads, roundabouts, crossing points, you name it, all came actually in this implementation. So what are we going to talk about? What are the themes or the topics actually that we're going to present and share with you? So one of them is on safety and liability. And Ilse will be talking more about that. The same also about citizen engagement, context and user effect. And last but not least, I will be finishing off the themes by sharing some knowledge and experiences about infrastructure and associated technologies. And last but not least, also on data. And now we'll give the floor to Ilse.
Thank you. So, I see that I have to speed up a bit. So, Tim, you already touched upon the critical issue of safety. Safety is also your key for approval for permission. It will make or break it. But more often, it's about human perception. So if people perceive a feeling of safety, it can help build trust. And that's eventually what you want, because these are also your future passengers who need to be willing to use it. It can also help to touch upon their expectations, so inform them well. Good expectation management there really helps. Also take into account dependency. Clearly inform everyone on the boundaries and the possibilities, so that everyone is aware of all the limitations, but also expect stakeholders to disrupt or boycott even your rules or your pilot. Citizen engagement. Fit to the needs, to the operational strategy. For instance, a lower speed wouldn't be an issue for elderly, but maybe it would for commuters. It can really help users to intrinsically motivate them to act and to react as if it's a real situation, so it will help you in having the results that you're aiming for. You can also do it by finding engaging ways for them to collect user feedback. You can use motivational rewards or any interactive apps that help them to quickly and to easily gain your feedback. So you should go beyond feedback collection. Public involvement is very important. An educational campaign to discuss your value propositions for CCAM and to fit it to really public concerns, societal issues. Help them to motivate them to want to use and want to be part of your pilot. I think I already mentioned it a bit. Familiarize the citizens with the shuttle. What will happen? Mainly when there's no safety operator is on board, they really need to know what's part of the pilot. Communication and awareness days will really help to raise the awareness. Context and user effect. Again, expectation management. User experience can be affected by pilot restrictions. So be clear on what the restrictions of the pilot are. For instance, if there are repetitive emergency stops, or slow shuttle operations, or repairs that need to be done in between. So they know exactly what's part of the pilot and what's not. When talking about user experience, clearly define the users in relation to their context. Who are you testing with, and how does this add to your research goal? Most certainly when you're focusing on mixed traffic operations or intervening with vulnerable road users, this is very important. Who are the other ones who are involved in your context? Are there local residents? Or which effect does it have on the entire context, not only the ones who will be in your vehicle? And maybe most important, focus on the human. What's your highest aimed effect? You really have to keep a close eye on the goal to achieve useful insights and to motivate and activate the ones that are really in need of the change. In the end, it's all about making the cities walkable, inclusive, safe, and sustainable. We're wanting to we're having this bigger vision of reduced cars on roads, and we're giving space back. And that's really important to state from the beginning, that it's not pushing the technology, but it's about the human and to make it more safe. We're building cities for people, not for cars.
Yeah, thank you, Ilse. And I see we're already a bit over time, so I know that Tim is going to be mad at me, but I'm sorry, Tim. Apologies for that. What Ilse is actually saying is that safety is a combination maybe of three things. One of them is mentioned here, but it's about the safety of the vehicle and the technology, the perception of safety by the passengers, but also by other road users, vulnerable road users in other cars, for instance, but also infrastructure and communication. So how do you communicate clearly that something is different now, I would say, in the traffic situation from before? So that's very important. And one of the key elements in that is also how do you implement and how do you adjust your infrastructure for these new types of systems. And there are two ideologies in that, I would say. One of them is, like we as humans also perceive and do, is the use of digital infrastructure, for instance, traffic lights, priority rules, traffic information, and these type of things, and then try to connect that also to the vehicle with a digital connection. That is one. But there are also cities who say, look, and that's what you mainly see in the States, we don't care, we were not going to change the infrastructure that much. It's more important that the vehicle is able to cope and integrate in the existing traffic situations that we have, that the vehicle needs to be so smart that it can actually read traffic lines, that it can go around obstacles, for instance, etc., etc. So there are different ideologies. Well, my expectation and what I hear from people is that most likely the truth is somewhere in between, that it will be a combination of both. But we'll see, of course, in the future how that pans out. The other thing is, of course, how can we eliminate those blind spots? And how can we ensure, if we go for smart infrastructure, that we ensure that the vehicle is also being helped to look around the corner, for instance, where we as people, we cannot see, but of course such a vehicle, due to the limitations of its sensors, is also not able to see it. Now, how can we do that? By increasing bandwidth, the use of 5G, for instance, but also intelligent sensors, cameras, traffic lights, and communication. So there are different perspectives in that as well. And last but not least, this is a very difficult topic. You can organize an entire conference about it if you want to, but it's about, of course, data security and policy about it. What we see in experience is that there's still a need of policy and guidelines on data handling and also the storage of data. What we see right now is that it mainly is focusing on personal identifiable information, so personal information that is being secured and yeah, in that sense. But there are also, of course, also other ways of data, so retrieving data in case of an accident, retrieving data in case of other things, etc., etc. And the same actually holds for cybersecurity. There's not really regulations. It's currently being drafted, especially in Europe. about cybersecurity, and what we see and what we experience is that there's mainly a reliance on third parties or on the technology suppliers themselves, that they have that covered. And what you see right now is that a couple of those authorities, for instance in the Netherlands, but I believe also in Belgium, they're doing a couple of tests. Sometimes they're organizing hackathons, for instance, as an example, but it's not that much yet explored and tested. So, finalizing the presentation, because I see that Tim is already grabbing the microphone, so I have to be quick. What is very important, what did we notice, is preparation, of course, is key. It is important that you collect and get the right stakeholders next to you to collaborate on such an important but also difficult implementation. I think one of the implementations here in Terhills is a very good example of that. You didn't do it alone, Tim. I don't think so. At least you had a couple of stakeholders in that, a couple of partners. So, and draft together that comprehensive plan. That is very important. And cooperating is also in that sense very important. Not just with the stakeholders, but also with those who are going to use the service, those who are going to be in touch with the service. So integrate and be in mixed traffic situations. And last but not least, what we definitely see and what we experience is that there is big potential for this solution. That's also what Tim is saying, but it still needs further development. And it's still a very much tailor-made implementation and approach that you have to look at location-specific, and based on that, really implement it. But the goal is, of course, to upscale and make it as easy as possible. Well, we see, of course, potential for that, but we also know there is still a lot of development going on for the next couple of years. And that's actually how we conclude our presentation. This was really a short insight, I would say, in all those lessons learned. There's much more to discuss, much more to also mention. But yeah, unfortunately, time prohibits us, but also we wanted to give you a first insight in what is actually already possible and how should you approach it. Thank you so much for listening, and I hope you have a lot of questions.
Hello, my name is Clément Bourg. I'm the head of autonomous vehicle for the Terhills Group, public transit operator. You mentioned something very interesting at the beginning, that you wanted to achieve a sustainable business case, saying that your main target might be to reduce the cost, to make it more attractive. But don't you think that it's a mistake to focus on cost, considering that even an L4 service costs 10 times more than a regular public transit vehicle? And don't you think we should focus on something else to promote the autonomous mobility?
I think, first of all, what we see in cities, and that's a bit higher, a higher goal, especially in the Netherlands, is that a lot of cities don't have spaces anymore, mainly in the Netherlands. And it's a very good question, by the way, Clément. Thank you so much for that. These cities, what we see, and it was mainly in the 70s, I believe, they were built around cars. So a lot of car roads were implemented. And these cars, now they occupy a lot of space that actually could also be used for homes, for instance, or building apartments. Now, what we see in the Netherlands happening, and as a transition, is how can we promote public transportation in general? So, and ensure that in that case, people are not that reliant anymore on their own passenger car, their privately owned car. One of the things that you mentioned, you have a very key point in that is, don't focus only on the business case, but also how can we promote then public transportation? Because one of them is, of course, the cost, that is one, but also what we see is a big shortage of, just as an example, bus drivers. There are just not enough bus drivers, and therefore public transport operators are not able to actually provide the service anymore as they promised. And of course, that is not what we want to give to passengers. So that is also one of the key elements, and I hope that answers your question, Clément, that focusing on AV is also a way to support, in this case, this social challenge that we have.